After a brief fight with some simple trash, you'll be up against the first of 4 bosses in the gauntlet style raid, Blaster. Blaster will cast Mind Blast, which hits the entire raid for a fair amount of damage. Blaster will also fire 3 AoEs which leave behind mines, which deal huge damage and paralysis if stepped on. Don't step onto these and move away if necessary. Lastly, he will cast Mirage, targeting 4 players for damage. Untargetable ads will spawn wherever you decide to drop the mark and then dash through the raid. The ad doesn't necessarily target the marked person, so the best way to deal with this is to actually drop them on the edge, close to each other, so everyone can visually identify the dash direction and move away if they need to. Next up is Brawler, who really only has one mechanic. He'll levitate with his arms out and use either Single Buster, Double Buster or a drill. Look at the hands to identify which one he's going to use. If you see only 1 cannon, it's Single Buster, 2 cannons, Double Buster or 1 drill. For Single Buster, the tank will take a meaty hit. For Double Buster, you should stack in, i.e. tank move into the rest of the raid to split the damage. For the drill, just move back and spread out to reduce the damage taken. There is no cast bar for this, so you need to have your eyes open to see which move is about to occur. Brawler also applies a stacking magic vulnerability debuff on the tank. You should tank swap at about 3 stacks. Anything higher in the main tank is likely to get one shot by Buster. All of these abilities can hit quite hard, so make sure you use defensive cooldowns. Or this will happen. Next up is Swindler. Shortly after you pull, the environment will change. Some tiles will move up and some tiles will move down. After this happens, everyone is inflicted with one of 2 debuffs, high arithmetics or low arithmetics. If you have low arithmetics, the red debuff then stand on the high ground, and if you have high arithmetics, the purple debuff stand on the low ground. If you don't, you will take damage and vulnerability up, so move quickly. Swindler also casts fire arithmetics, which is low room-wide damage. Swindler lastly casts Enumeration, surrounding a single player with a yellow marker and a number of spheres above the player. The marked person needs to stack with the same number of players as spheres to negate the damage. If it's 1 sphere, don't stack. If 2 spheres, stack with 1 person, and so on. Here we have 4 spheres, so 3 people should have stacked in, but YOLO, it's Duty Finder. This is a fairly weak skill if you aren't marked for vulnerability up and can be tanked through if you're full HP. Lastly, we have Vortex. This guy will apply a stacking debuff on the tank, so tank swap when necessary. 3 stacks is usually okay. He'll cast Elemental Jammer, marking a player with a large blue marker. This is important later on. After the next AoE drops down, lava will persist, and whoever was marked earlier can move into the lava to spawn a cyclone. If the person doesn't, they'll just deal AoE damage around them. More AoE spawn, this time ice circles, which again leave behind a persistent DOT and heavy when inside, but more importantly will freeze the cyclone, so one player should overlap the ice AoE over the cyclone to deal with the next mechanic. Vortex will cast Super Cyclone, which will knock players back, so just make sure you don't have anything bad behind you. Vortex will then start casting Ultra Flash and wipe the raid unless the Frozen Cyclone, which is now a big ice ball, is between you and the boss. Make sure the boss isn't being tanked on the ice ball and don't be in the hitbox of the ice ball, be behind it. These mechanics repeat until Vortexer is dead. GG easy.